Starting in the right place. I've gone through 5 or 6 titles for this, so I think this one will kind of fit. Thought it was interesting that Dustin's speech also started with starting. I guess we're going to co-flagellate, or however that word works. Generally, nowadays in an economy, the way things are a little bit, things can be a little tough, and it can be pretty challenging for a lot of people. The benefit is that there's actually a lot of excellent people out there to help work for you and work with you. The hard part is figuring out a lot of these people who have the competence and availability now to now be part of your teams as well. So the question is where do I start at primary importance? Like, I've gone through just trying to think, now what is really valuable? What type of person would I want working with me? Well, if you're like me, I first have to figure out the things that maybe you're good, but maybe not best. So I've read one time that the enemy of something best is something that's really, really good. So first of all, someone who's knowledgeable. First of all, it looks really great and excellent, but it dries up really quickly, and you realize that this isn't maybe the first thing. It's very important. And knowing how to do something is a high value, but it's not really the highest value, to be honest. You often see people, think back, just if you will, back to people in high school or college, elementary school, people who you saw with incredible ability. And these very same people, not always the people who have the ability, are the people who are going to convert that over to success. Why is that? Ability seems more like one of those things that's not really as much of a key equation, but something that's kind of helpful. It really does co-flagellate with a few other things. It would make sense that after years and years of education, that knowledge would actually be the biggest benefit to someone who you'd be wanting to hire. Question here such as experience. There's a few questions with each one of these things we're going to touch on. The first one, with someone who has knowledge, maybe you're trying to figure out if this is something helpful. First, ask yourself the question, how does this person translate maybe what they've read in a book or what they've seen on TV or what they learned in school to what you're actually doing? Do they have that ability? Would that be something helpful? The second area that would be really good in hiring someone, but maybe not the primary first thing you'd look for, is experience. It's also tempting because if you have someone who's done something similar to the job you're doing or done the exact same job for maybe a competitor, it's very easy to go, this would be excellent. I don't have to train them at all. I don't have to do anything of that nature. Hands that are already trained are so tempting just because you know that you don't have to start from zero. Sometimes if someone has knowledge about a job, though, if your experience is like mine, when I go into something, if I feel like I already know what to do, I tend to want to do it my way instead of going the direction that maybe a different company might be doing something in a different way. So a few questions you might ask is, why did you leave your last job? If this person is overly qualified, why are they looking at this other certain job regarding experience? Now, we've looked at knowledge, which is really good. We looked at experience, which is also really good. The third one is someone who is zealous. They're excited about doing the job. This is also really great. It's one of those things that all three of these things so far are all just excellent things to look for. They start out with a lot of energy, but do they really have the staying power that's just going to keep on keeping on with what they're doing? You might be tempted just to toss them in if you have a pretty low-key work environment and you just want to spice things up. That's dangerous, though. If nothing else, some questions to maybe ask someone who might be zealous are just some questions such as, does this person going to stand the test of time, or are they going to fizzle out? Another question might be, do they have zeal? That's great, but do they have knowledge about what to do with it? Do they know how to convert that into something that's helpful? Because a lot of times when you have the zeal and you don't have knowledge, you just kind of miss the way because you're too hasty. None of these, again, that I've mentioned are unimportant at all. They're actually quite important. And it's always tempting to put any one of these as the number one thing that you look for when you're trying to get someone to work with you on a project or anything of that nature. But the main area where you always want to start, and this is of primary importance beyond everything we've said before, is you always want to make sure you get someone you can work with who you can trust above everything. simply because the key question that you should be asking, we'll start with that instead of going backwards with it. Can I trust this person? Is this someone who, if I were to pick them for a task, that they have the moral fiber, and I've heard one word I've heard that I really like is the gumption just to get it done. So trust is key in leadership, since without it, there can really be no opportunity to follow. So if this person isn't going to trust you, then they're really going to continue to do their own thing. They're going to be in that area of knowledge or experience, and they're going to think that what they think is best, and they're not going to trust you. For leadership to be effective, people have to genuinely not only believe in you, but also believe that you have their interests at heart. If I'm working for someone and I don't feel like they have my genuine interest at heart, what'll happen is oftentimes I'll do a lot of the things that they'll say, but then I'll get to points where I'll go, I think I know the best way here. Basically, it's just a lack of me in trusting the person who is my project leader or boss in that category. So leadership also is mentioned here because when you hire people, there's several different things that can happen. There's not many things that actually can happen. First of all, they can be successful and promote them. This is good. The second one, they can be an excellent person, but just maybe you don't fit right here. Maybe here is really a better place for you. The third area would be that they just don't have the ability or trustworthy to move up in a direction. Maybe just like where they're at is exactly where they need to be. The fourth one is that they'll actually leave the job, whether they give you notice or not. And the last way would be you have to fire them. Now, the last ones aren't as good. The first one, you want to make sure that you have people you can trust so that you can move them up. And so you can move them in the right spots. Those first two are very key. It also makes it easier on yourself. I've worked in jobs in the past where we would train people, and we wouldn't always get the people who would trust the leadership of what's going on. And so what would end up happening is they would leave, and they would leave, and they would leave. And so we would spend so much time training people again and again and again, and it was just going out the door. It was just all this time spent training people that were just gone by the time they were fully trained. So, and that's just crazy to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. David, I think you had something on the table topics along that line. Again, trust is more than experience. It's more than knowledge. It's more than zeal. It's actually all those put together are very helpful. But trust is where you have to start. Someone can be trained to do many different jobs, but without trust, there's no way to tell if the person is actually going to work with you or against you when they're there. And lastly, how do I find people who are of high trust? First of all, look around at people who are doing good, who are really getting after their jobs, who are not only doing their jobs, but also going beyond. What are little things that people are doing here and there to just be excellent at whatever they do? Because things tend to translate not only from work, but also to life and everything else. I found that I've been working on some certain things personally in my life, and I found it's been translating over in other areas of my life. And that's kind of strange to me, but I guess it does work that way. Also, ask yourself who is aggressively seeking out opportunities, not only complete the task, but keeping on them. Kind of touched on that. And then ask people who you know for an accurate assessment. Oftentimes, I look at things and I kind of have an idea as to how things work. Sometimes I need to ask other people who just have a different viewpoint as to how that person operates or such. And ask someone who's worked with them in a previous capacity. Is there someone who maybe, do they maybe freak out in the middle of stress? Do they aggressively seek out opportunities? Someone who worked with them before would actually know things like this. Interview, knowledge, experience, and zeal are all great in points. They cannot be discounted, but trust is number one. It cannot be anything else. Because when you begin with trust, then all the other things can build on. Because people will learn, and they can gain experience, and they can grow more zealous in understanding. But if they don't trust you, you're going to be beating your head up against a wall again and again and again. And the question is really, if it's not someone who I trust, and it's not someone who really trusts me to lead them, is that really someone who I want to work with me anyway?